Hello and welcome back to Lauren's Legends. I hope that you are enjoying spooky season. I actually did my spooky nails today and I'm loving them. As we go forward on this channel, I am going to be talking about near-death experiences at times. And today just happens to be my own story about my near-death experience. So sit back and enjoy. I am extremely blessed to come from the family that I've come from. Growing up, I never questioned if I was loved. My parents never let me doubt that I had a plan and a purpose for my life. I did grow up going to church and knowing that there is a God, and in my teenage years, just like many other teenagers, I rebelled and I really wasn't thinking about my faith and anything to do with it, more focused on boys and having fun. A huge passion of mine is horses. It's been a passion since I was 3 or 4 and saw my first one. I actually, at 5, went to a horse camp and my feet couldn't touch the stirrups. Growing up, I showed horses. I had horse riding lessons every single week, and it was one of my biggest passions and still is today. I also grew up with a father who's a car salesman. As soon as I say that, most people think car salesman, shady. My dad is absolutely nothing like that. He is one of the most honest and caring people that have ever existed on this planet. He came across this man named Mr. Strickhauser, and he was already in his 80s at the time. Mr. Strickhauser had a house way out in the country that had acres and acres of land, and he had 3 horses. He couldn't ride them. Nobody was out there riding them, but he just had them because he loved them on his land. So my dad actually worked out an amazing deal with Mr. Strickhauser because he didn't want to overcharge this older man, and he gave him this great car. Part of the deal was that his daughter, myself, would get to come out and ride his horses for free. Mr. Strickhauser was very clear the horses were not trained. I would have to come out there and train them, but that would be how I could ride them, is I would train them, wouldn't have to pay any money. My parents were thrilled because they wouldn't have to spend money on horseback riding lessons, and this was more freedom. I'd actually get to go out into the wild with these horses and run them across the field and not everything be structured as it was showing and the like. So that is how I began going out there, and I loved this farm. I love this land. It was freedom I'd never experienced before, and I lived out there as much as I possibly could between the other sports and school. About 2 years had gone by that I had regularly been going out to this farm. The horses, I had trained them from scratch. I knew that my black horse, his name was Sport, and no, I did not name any of these horses. He would literally feel me start going to the side and lean into it to stop me. We just had an incredible bond. Unfortunately, Sport ended up passing away, and it was horrible for me. I was completely distraught, heartbroken. I loved this horse so much. But Mr. Strickhauser decided to buy another horse, and this horse came in very green. And if you don't know about horseback riding, green is when they're not trained and they need a lot of help. Well, he came in, he was a huge, beautiful red horse, and his name was Junior. He came in and he is a thoroughbred. Very tall horse, very strong, stallion, very powerful. December 4th, 2004 came around, and one of my best friends, Melissa, known her since I was 5. She's very close to me and dear to my heart. I had stayed at her house the night before because her birthday is actually December 5th. And when I had been at her house the night before, I again was very excited about having Junior, and I had talked to her about coming out and going horseback riding with me. The thing is, we were actually in a school play. I was 15 at the time, and I was a sophomore, and we had a Christmas production that we were putting on with the school. Melissa was also in that production, and we had planned on going out, but the next morning I came back to my parents' house. We went to church, we went to lunch after, and I was so ready. That was the thing my dad and I did after church, is we would come back to the house, get ready, and then we would go out to the horses. That afternoon, I heard from Melissa, and so much time had passed by, it just wasn't going to work out, and she decided to stay on her birthday with her family, and she would see me at the play that night. I am beyond grateful to this day that she decided that. Obviously, I would want her to come out and ride the new horse. I mean, that's the whole point of getting her out there that day. The universe works in mysterious ways, and she did not come. My dad and I did go out to the horses, and I had been riding for a while, and it was about time to come back and detack the horse and start going home so I could shower and get to the play at 7 that night. My dad, again, sweetest person on earth. I was not the sweetest person on earth. I was an ornery teenager, and something had happened in the barn between us. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but he somehow got under my skin, and my reaction was to run the horse away in a tantrum. Don't do that. In that situation, just don't do that. It's stupid. I learned my lesson. The way that the actual farm was laid out is when you go up to the farm, you go down this dirt road and you're coming up, and there's a field on this side and there's a field on this side. You turn a corner to the left, and there's this beautiful vista of land where they had this tiny little farmhouse here, and then the barn was over here. The back pasture, what we called it, was behind the barn where the hill went down, and there was a long set of woods, like it was a huge square. And this long set of woods ran through. In the middle, or after that, those woods, was a massive rectangular field. And on the other side of that field was another huge set of trees that ran through. And after those trees, Rocky River flows through, which is this big river. There's no fence at the bottom of it because the river was too wide for the horses to cross, and it was a natural barrier. In my tantrum, I run the house out of the barn, and there's a trail that goes all the way around the outskirts of the fence. We trot down, and we're going between where the two sets of trees were, and that huge rectangular field where no one can see me. My dad was a mile away. My dog Roxie was with my dad, and Roxie was an almost black Siberian Husky mix. And she's one of the best dogs that's ever existed on earth, and you're gonna find out even more why. Beautiful, sweet, she looked like a black wolf with golden eyes. Back to trotting down on the outskirts of the fence, I go through the trail, and we are now coming into the big rectangle pasture. I positioned Junior straight on the side, and my plan at that point was to just give him his head and let him go. I wanted to run full out in the field. That's the best way to relieve any stress if you ever have it. We do just that. He is running as fast as he possibly can, loving life. I'm, up there hanging on, and it's just us against the entire world. And then this is why I can never, ever question if there is a God or there is somebody looking out for me. I have argued this point with many different people from many different beliefs. Whatever your belief is, I always believe that that is your choice, and I respect you as a human and your actions. But for me, I know that my guardian angel probably hates his job and gets the short end of the stick or the draw every single time. Because running straight out, as fast as this horse can go, over the right side by my ear, I hear a very strong male voice say, "Slow down." Immediately, and even to this day, talking about it, it makes my eyes water. It makes me have chills. It's as if I was back in that moment. As soon as I heard that, I jerked back and I looked over my shoulder, and I'm scared. I know I heard a voice. This is not my imagination. I know I heard something, and there's no one there. So we go from a full-on gallop, the fastest a horse goes, down to a canter, which is the loping. It's a slow run, a step up above a trot. I'm still going forward, and in the canter, and again, louder and more dominant, I hear, "Slow down." This time, I know there is no way around it. This is real. Someone is yelling at me. So I jerk the reins back as hard as I can. I sit back. I'm looking every single direction around me because there's got to be someone standing at the edge of the woods. There has to be. This wasn't my dad's voice. It wasn't a voice I've ever heard before. I know I heard this. And Junior goes from a canter to a trot. A trot is when they're stepping their feet up. It's a very brisk kind of jog walk. We had slowed down a lot. And when he goes into the trot, the girth, which holds the saddle on, it's the strap that goes underneath from side to side. The girth breaks and it comes down and it slaps him in the back leg between his legs. And his first reaction is to buck up. And bucking up is the back legs going back. Thinking I'm doing the right thing, I hold my seat, which is where you no longer have control over the saddle and your legs are what is holding you on the horse. It's completely your own body strength. And then once his legs come down, the girth is still hanging there and it comes up and it slaps him in the chest underneath his throat. When that happens, he rears up again, front legs straight up in the air, and I can feel myself starting to lose my seat. I can feel that there's getting air underneath my bottom on his back through the saddle. When he rears up, again, this continues where he goes down and it's slapping him. And the poor horse, I'm sure, thought he was getting attacked by something, and it hurt. It hurt him really bad. I could hear it smacking, having no idea what was going on underneath me. And as it goes on, it's getting more violent. He is more desperate to get away from the thing attacking him. The last thing I remember is I do begin to lose my seat on him. And there was one more buck with his back legs going up that I actually felt air. And then he rears up again and I feel his shoulders hit me and I'm now in the air. Then he bucks again, and at this point I'm in the air and his butt basically catapults me up in the air, and I fly up through the air and I'm looking down and he is rearing up as high up as he can, and I look him in the eyes as I fall in front of him, and then he tramples me. I land on the ground. I don't remember hitting the ground. I know that I had to have been there for some time, but please keep in mind, this is December 5th in North Carolina and it's cold. It was probably 45 degrees out and I had been wearing a purple sweater. And again, everything this day truly went right for me to survive this. The next thing I know, which I had never lost consciousness like this, I have played many sports, I've had a quick blackout here and there, but I remember something licking my hand. And it was as if I was in a movie where it was going kind of black, where then I'd have color and then it would be black, but I just remember the licking on my hand. And my eyes finally opened and I turned my head and it was Roxie. And Roxie was licking my hand. And as soon as I made eye contact with Roxie, she bolts. I am crushed. My only friend in the world that was with me, keeping me company, just left me. And I lose consciousness again. I remember the dart coming back and laying there. And then I hear, dum, 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 dum. And then I hear my dad's voice. And what had happened, and I've truly told this story before and people haven't believed me and actually called my dad so he could back it up. But Roxie did the entire Lassie thing where she ran to my dad, and Roxie knew, she was smart enough to know that something was seriously wrong with me. And she had run so hard, it was over a mile away where my dad was. He had been up working on a fence or something. And she was foaming at the mouth, and he went to go and get her because he's thinking, did she get bit by a snake? I mean, this is not okay. Why is my dog foaming at the mouth? And Roxie stayed far enough away where he had to keep following her to all the way down to the edge of the tree line. When my dad went to the edge of the tree line, out of the corner of his eye, He sees the horse standing there first with no saddle on, and then he sees purple. I was the purple, and I was on the ground, and the noises I heard of the thump, thump was my dad running to me. When my dad gets to me, I'm in shock. I have no idea I've even been injured. It didn't even cross my mind. I just was there and I was cold. My dad had an old leather coat and he took it off and he laid it over me and he's trying to get me to stand up. I had fallen off of horses many different times. That is just something that comes with riding horses. But I had never been injured falling off a horse. When my dad is trying to get me to stand up, I don't understand. I can roll over. I did have visual injuries, just I hadn't noticed them and seen them. He did. When I rolled over, I couldn't get up. That was terrifying. We are thinking, what are we gonna do? We are all the way down here in this field. He had his vehicle all the way by the farmhouse. How is he gonna drive it through? It dawned on him the only choice was to call 911. He had an old Nextel. Yes, I'm aging myself how long ago it was when I was 15. But his phone was dead. My dad had to make the awful gut-wrenching decision to leave me on the ground. And this was something that I told him, you have to do, Dad. I need you to go to a phone. And he had to leave me out in that field. My poor father gets up to the farmhouse and goes in there to call 911, and the phone line didn't work. The nearest neighbor from that house was another mile away. My dad, still knowing I'm down there and can't move, had to leave that farmhouse and go to the closest neighbor to finally call 911 for me. I lost consciousness again when he left to make those phone calls, but I heard him coming back and it just made me so happy inside that I wasn't going to be alone again. The next thing I hear are these huge trucks coming through the field and going through the actual woods. I am confused because I have no idea what's happening, and they turn the corner and it was ambulances and fire trucks. There had actually been we were out in the country. There had actually been a volunteer rescue team that had been at church, and they were the closest ones to us, so they were able to get the vehicles and come out into the field. This entire time, I wasn't feeling pain. It just felt like pressure. It felt like pressure in my head. It felt like pressure in my back and my ankle and my fingers, all of the above. I felt pressure, but it wasn't pain. It's incredible what being in shock actually does to your body. But then I get in the ambulance. The ambulance is warm, their heat's blasting, and my body starts getting a grip on itself. And the pain that I felt throughout, it radiated my entire body. And I remember them giving me the pain medicine and it not touching anything. While all this was going on, what I forgot to mention is my mother growing up never worked on Sundays. Sundays were the sacred day that we went to church, we hung out with each other. She did not work. This Sunday though, the first Sunday that she had worked in God knows how long, she was saving up for Christmas, and I believe December 5th. It was a bi-weekly pay little side job that she had started where she was working at this place in the mall. She decided to work this Sunday. My mom was at Concord Mills, which Concord Mills is a good 25 or so minutes to the hospital I was taken to. From where I was at the farm to the hospital I was taken to was maybe 45 minutes or so. My dad follows the ambulance to the hospital, right behind it. We get to the hospital and the back door opens, and the first thing I see is my mom's face. I am so confused. I have no idea how my mother was at a job 25 minutes away, getting the phone call when we were on the way because my dad had to call 911. He wasn't calling my mom, he was calling 911 in the situation. My mother had somehow left her job and raced so fast to the hospital. She beat the ambulance there. And the first thing my mom says to me is, "Move your toes." I was able to move my toes and she just starts crying. And she knows that I'm going to make it. I'm going to be okay. I can move my toes. The next couple hours for me were some of the most excruciating hours I have ever been through in my life. And God, I hope I ever go through. When you hurt your back, the amount of x-rays they have to take is absolutely insane. And they have to do every single square inch of it. And by this point, no pain medicine is going to help me. Nothing is going to help me. I hurt so bad. And they were making me pick my hips up and everything to get these. And my family could hear me screaming from the waiting room how bad it was. I will leave it at that. Remember, I was supposed to be in that play that night. The people that I went to school and church with came to the emergency room and did a huge prayer chain out in the waiting room while I was back there. If you were part of that, thank you. I am still incredibly grateful for that. I think it helped me get through everything I had to go through. The reason the voice over my shoulder is so insanely important is a doctor walked in, and after everything that he looked at with my x-rays and how many places in my body were injured, the first things out of his mouth is, "Ma'am, you are a very lucky woman. If you had been going any faster or any higher, you would be paralyzed or dead right now." I remember just breaking out and crying, being so grateful that I had more of my life to live and that I wouldn't have to do it in a wheelchair. That one day, that one situation caused me to crush several vertebrae in my back. I broke my back at 15 and I had other injuries, and to this day, my two pinkies are still crooked from that situation. And I am so incredibly grateful that it was not worse. And that one situation changed me for life in so many ways that instead of using this as a curse, I used it as a blessing. At 15, I had to leave school. I had to homeschool for a year and a half while I healed. I ended up being able to go back for my senior year. And I felt different than other kids. One of the reasons this has made me who I am today is it taught me never to give up on the things that you love and the things that are important to you. After all this happened, I didn't know if I would ever even get close to a horse again. And my dad actually sat down with me and had a talk with me about possibly never going back out to the horses. And it was something that absolutely devastated me and made me go into a bit of a depression, thinking that my outlet for so long, my entire life thus far, had been being able to ride a horse. And that was my stress reliever. Thinking never to do that again was horrifying. At the same time, facing a horse was also horrifying. And I went to my dad one day and said, "Dad, I love this. I need to go out and I need to see them." That was a very, very touchy subject between my mom and my dad, but my dad and my mom respected it. And my dad and I went out there, and being back there was a feeling that I could never try to express in words. They just don't cut it. But we were able to walk around, and Sheba, again, did not name any of these horses, is a huge, beautiful white Tennessee Walker with blue eyes. She was an older horse and just precious. And my dad led me around, and that was the first horse I got back on when I was still healing, but I could trust Sheba. And after that, we walked down to where it all happened. I needed to face that spot. I needed to look at it, and I needed to see where I had come from and where I was going to go. When we walked out of the woods, I looked down and I could actually still see my dad's footprints. It had been very dry in that winter. his footprints were 5 feet apart. It was insane to see the panic in his footprints on the ground. And to this day, I am so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful to have had this happen because I understand when people have gone through extremely hard things and what it's like on the other side of it. And I truly hope that this story can help at least one person know that even in the hardest moments of your life, good times do come and it is temporary. And you have to keep pushing, especially push for the things that you love. That is my story of my near-death experience. I hope you've got something out of this. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you want me to talk about next time and have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening.